After that, our story jumps over to present-day Gotham though, with 3 armed criminals stopping a truck driver from continuing his route by blocking the road with an old sedan. So he tried telling them to get out of the way because he needed to unload his shipment by 4 o'clock, but it wasn't long before he was forced to exit the vehicle when one of them whipped out a sidearm, urging him to flee the scene. But as one of the accomplices sifted through the product as fast as they possibly could, the truck driver decided that he wasn't going to follow their orders and refused to cooperate, so the criminal holding him at gunpoint eventually let his temper get the best of him, blasting the driver onto the ground and leaving him slumped in a puddle of his own blood. And making it even worse for them, just moments later, the GCPD arrived ready to put them into cuffs and take them into custody. So the thief in possession of the product darted into a nearby alleyway, hoping that he wouldn't be seen, but that's when none other than Tim Drake stopped him in his tracks by smashing him in the head with his staff so hard that his face mask shattered into little pieces. However, upon tasting the product that the criminal was trying to smuggle, Tim was confused because it was sweet and he couldn't pinpoint what kind of drug he was dealing with. So the perpetrator implied that he was going through hard times, expressing that it was only baby formula that he was stealing because his child was hungry all the time. But before Tim could sort things out on his own and figure out how to handle such a sensitive situation, the cops came blazing in with their firearms, ordering both Tim and the father to freeze because they weren't afraid to start pulling triggers. So just like we saw previously, Tim contacted Bruce over the emergency bat frequency, asking him if they were friendly with any of the officers in the GCPD. But in the midst of doing so, the father taking the formula grew so overwhelmed that he got up from the ground and attempted fleeing the scene again, only to be struck down just moments later after one of the cops unloaded a round directly into his back. After that, Tim was so angry that he decided he wasn't going to cooperate with the police as well, so he dug into his utility belt, slammed a mini flashbang onto the ground, and then tried scaling one of the buildings they were next to with his grip-assisted combat boots. But right before he could reach the top, things took a turn for the worse when the same cop that struck down the robber blasted him in the rib cage. Our story then goes back into the past, with Bruce in the midst of teaching Tim how to drive a manual transmission. And at this point it was already nighttime, and it's implied that Tim hadn't made much progress and was struggling to get the hang of things. So wanting to tease him for his lack of progress, Damien then leaped onto the hood of the vehicle, calling him an incompetent moron and insinuating that he could do better. But moments later, it's clear that Bruce was sick of his son's lack of compassion, so he instructed Tim to take his foot off the clutch even though Damien was still on the hood, instantly causing him to lose his balance before flying backwards onto the lawn.